Thank you for doing the new... Hello and welcome to my channel everybody, I'm Steph. I'd been thinking about doing the Booktube Newbie Tag for a little while, and when I had a look at the questions I laughed a little bit to myself and thought they sound a little bit like an interview, a kind of, are you allowed to be on Booktube? So I figured I should do them like an interview. Let's get into the questions. Welcome to the Booktube Newbie interview questions. Why did you start this channel? I started this channel probably for the same reason as most people who do Booktube, which is that I absolutely love to read. And even though I do have some friends that I can talk to about some of the books that I love, I wanted to have this larger community of people on YouTube who can share thoughts and reflections on the books they've been reading, on the characters they've been loving, and on any upcoming books, any tags, all these kind of fun things that I've been seeing. I just wanted to be part of all that. What are some fun and unique things that you wish to bring to Booktube? I think that's a really difficult question actually. It's that whole thing about what makes me unique, how am I different from other people? And I think one thing for me is that I tend to read rather random books compared to what I hear most people talk about in everyday life. And so just recently, for example, I read a book about animal cognition, I read a book about the Rwandan genocide, I read some sci-fi books, including one written by a robot as a kind of diary. And I think that is something that will make my channel quite quirky. And I hope to bring some of this random quirkiness of mine onto this channel and hopefully share it with other booktubers and other people in the community so that we can all read more widely, enjoy books in their fullest, and just enjoy the variety and diversity that there is. What are you most excited for about starting this channel on Booktube? I think I'm most excited about actually getting to engage with the Booktube community. I would love to hear people's comments. I'd love to hear when people have read the books that I'm talking about, what their thoughts are, as well as any book recommendations. I always love some dystopian fiction, some sci-fi books, some non-fiction books, historical fiction, you name it. Pretty much any book suggestions you might have, I would love to hear them. Why do you love to read? I think I read mostly for two reasons. One is to kind of escape from the everyday worries and to-do lists and all these kinds of things. So to have a kind of escape, a place to go to, you know, whether that's on a distant planet or in the minds of robots or I don't know what. So these are mostly the fiction books I tend to read. The other reason is that I like to learn more about the world. And so for that, the non-fiction side is really, really awesome. I also love this idea of having stories to carry around with me. So whether I might be traveling or whether I'm moving house, I always have these stories that I can have with me wherever I go. And the characters in the stories almost become like new friends. What book or series got you into reading? So I think the first series that I read must have been Enid Blyton's The Famous Five, which I read in German, so I'm not quite sure if that's the right title. I had some of the cassettes when I was a kid, and I do remember reading the books. I actually also remember struggling a little bit with the books because it must have been literally the very, very first books that I actually read. And I think I was probably around 8 at that time. The other big series that got me into reading, which I guess you can imagine, was Harry Potter. I think I must have been around 9 or 10 years old when the first book in the series came out in German. And I remember reading it probably within the Christmas holidays. I also remember that I did not want to talk to anybody about it, kind of because I wanted to keep the characters to myself and not really share them with anybody else. Sounds a bit funny now that I'm starting a Booktube channel. The other really funny thing is that I did not speak any English, and so I was reading the books in German. And I didn't know how to pronounce any of the names in English, so I actually remember calling, for example, Snape, Snapper, or Ravenclaw, Ravenclaw. What challenges do you think starting a Booktube channel will bring for you, and which ones do you think will be hardest to overcome? I think the biggest challenge for me probably will be making time to do the filming, because I do have a full-time job and I do have other things to do on the weekends sometimes. But I am hoping to do an upload schedule of around once a week. So stay tuned. When did you start to read? So as I said earlier, I think probably the first series that I read myself was the Enid Blyton books, the famous 5. However, I did have a lot read to me when I was a kid. I particularly remember one time where my grandma was reading me Pippi Longstockings, and I think she had just finished one round of the 2 books that we had at home when 5-year-old me said, "Grandma, can we start again?" So that love for reading has pretty much been with me all my life, I think. I can't really remember a time when I didn't have books. And even before I could even read any letters, I had these books that were full of illustrations, full of characters doing things, mowing the lawn, building houses, picking up the rubbish. And I just loved looking at these books. So I think books have always been, and hopefully will continue to always be, a really important part of my life. And lastly, what kind of books do you enjoy reading the most? I read really random books, so actually pinpointing what my favourite kind of book or my favourite genre is actually really hard for me. But I think if I had to do it, it would probably be dystopian fiction. I also really enjoy reading non-fiction, but I only recently kind of got into that. I read both physical books as well as Kindle books, and I just recently got into audiobooks as well. My local library has an Overdrive subscription, and so I get audiobooks on the library. And I also just started reading on my phone, which I don't enjoy quite as much, but it is quite nice to have that with me always. Alright everybody, these were my Booktube Newbie Tag questions. If you have any other questions for me, please let me know in the comments below, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye! I don't like this question.